skydiving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friday's edition of Raw Recovery. My name is Dion Miller, and my special guest today is Deanna from Denver. I've gotten to know Deanna a little bit as we were talking, but here again, you're going to be hearing it as I do as we get to know Deanna today. Deanna works at mental health, and I'm sorry, MHCD. We'll just go with that. She's been there for 8 years, a peer specialist. And I'm really happy to have you on and excited. Yeah, Jill was very excited to have you on. So Deanna, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking your time.
Yeah, thank you for asking me. Can't say no to AA.
Yeah, when it comes to service work, we got to say yes.
Right.
I went to my noon meeting today and nobody was raising their hand to chair, because we're all well. And
right.
And so somebody asked me, and yeah, I had to do it. God do it. Did I want to do it? Not really.
Right.
But God wanted me to do it. So I did. And it was a good meeting. So there you go. We do what we can every day just to be better people.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Deanna. Did you grow up in Colorado?
I grew up in Lakewood and graduated from Lakewood High and went on to college, what was then Metropolitan State College.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
In the 80s. I graduated in 80.
Wow, good for you.
Still live in Denver. I don't know what else. Ask me anything.
Well, I think I'm trying to get to the beginning of your drinking career here.
Okay. Well, yeah. I like to start with a little preview of that.
Fantastic. Yeah.
My family life. When I was a kid, I had a functioning alcoholic father and an undiagnosed schizophrenic mother.
Ouch. Okay.
Yeah. And when they divorced, like in 1965 or 6, you ought to lived with my mother for 6 years. And even though I'm in trauma therapy now and doing some EMDR, I still can't remember really those 6 years that I lived with her. Then my dad got custody of me, and then I started to drink and do drugs and smoke, and boys were involved very early.
Oh, boys.
Yeah. And I was 13.
Okay.
I was
very,
young.
very young. Yes.
Yes, that's very young. I was very broken inside, and alcohol did for me what I could not do for myself. And I was this shy, scared, fearful little girl in grade school and in 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, I started to drink. And this whole outgoing personality came out, and it kind of stuck. Okay. So I'm really grateful for that part. But that just shows me how fearful I was of living with my mother.
Okay.
So I started drinking and drugging early, and I thought that if I did grown-up things, that I would feel grown up.
Yeah.
And that's really not how that works.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, we were stealing booze from our parents and from the babysitter, right?
Fill the vodka up with the water.
Right.
Yeah. As long as it's not in the freezer.
Right. Cigarettes were 28 cents back then, and you didn't have to show an ID because they had those machines. And pot was out there. We called it pot back then, weed now, but it was the 70s, psychedelics. My girlfriend once said that we caught the last waves of Woodstock and rode them in. We were young hippie-ish type girls who sang. So, you know, I had a lot of fun and it hadn't interfered in my life. But moving forward into high school, you know, what happened for me was that all the kids I was hanging around with in 9th grade, we all went to 10th grade.
Okay.
And they all dropped out.
Okay.
But I was only 15 in 10th grade, not 16.
Yep, I was too.
So I couldn't drop out until I was 16. And then by the time I was in 11th grade, it dawned on me to finish high school that I was being foolish. And so I graduated high school. Still had like 2 sets of friends. I had my high school friends, and we drank and partied and went to My Sweet Lass and After the Gold Rush.
Yep.
Did a lot of 3-2, Mr. Lucky's, if you remember that place.
Barely.
And then another set of friends that did harder drugs. Okay. And by the time I was 16, I had been shooting up some speed, which was nothing like the speed that they sell today. I did that a little, and you know, I didn't do it enough because nobody ever had enough money because we were still kids.
Yeah.
So by the time I was 19, I just stopped doing that.
Okay.
I stopped shooting up. I just drank and did pills. There was a lot of pink hearts and black beauties and white crosses out then. And so I got together with somebody I met in junior high. His name was Steve, and we had a very tumultuous relationship for 8 years. Okay. And it did produce my son, thankfully, who today is 37.
Wow.
Steve actually drank himself to death about 18 years ago.
Oh, man.
Before he was even 50. It was really sad.
Wow.
It's really sad. But I always seemed to have a boyfriend. And if I didn't have a boyfriend, I was looking for a boyfriend, or I was trying to get rid of the one that I had to get another one. And there was always boys and men involved in my story. And that caused a lot of chaos and drama for me.
Certainly. Yeah.
20s, I graduated from college, and I was proud of myself. I went to work at the phone company, but along with being an alcoholic, also is another problem, and it's called making bad decisions.
Yes.
So even though my drugs wasn't really interfering with me going to work yet.
Okay.
But I was making bad decisions while at work. Like I went up on the roof with the maintenance guy and smoked weed, and I was gone from my desk for a long time, and people noticed, and I got fired. So that began quite a career of bartending and cocktailing. And that's I wouldn't say that that's a perfect job for an alcoholic. I did know that if I started drinking in the morning at 10 o'clock when I got there, that I wouldn't be able to do happy hour at 4 o'clock because I'd be too drunk. So I would wait all day. I don't know. I had all these little games I played with myself to prove to myself that I didn't drink, too much. And so chaos and drama still. My mom been in and out of Fort Logan now numerous times. When just to give you a little hint on how that relationship was, when I was 14 and we all smoked under this tree at school, and I was there smoking, and my friend Brad walked up and he started laughing when he saw me. And he said, "Oh, we saw your mom getting taken away in a straitjacket last night." And I was devastated.
Yeah.
I was like, F her and F you. And I walked off. And
Yeah.
that pretty much closed the curtain to any emotions that I had.
With your mom or just in general?
Just in general.
Okay.
It was really difficult to have a mentally ill parent.
Yeah.
And back then, the stigma, you know, my dad never talked about it. We never talked about it. She did some crazy things to me, and I didn't like her.
Yeah, we didn't recognize it like we do now. And there's a lot more help for it now. My wife's ex-husband is diagnosed. You know, and I pray for him all the time. There's just times, and he doesn't know. You know, God bless his soul, man.
Yeah, it's tough. She refused to admit that she had a problem for 25 years. Basically, she was in and out of Fort Logan yearly. So I just pretended I didn't have a mother.
All right.
You know, I had a kid when I was 25, and I was close with my dad. He was like my rock, even though he was a functioning alcoholic. He still was there for me at some level, and very, very financially there for me. Made sure me and Stefan didn't want anything. I remember I went through a period where I was too drunk to work, and he paid my rent for 2 months and that kind of stuff. And then I got it together and got a job, because back then you could get a job in a day.
Oh yeah.
You remember that?
You walk out your front door and get a job. It was not hard.
It was not hard. And so, you know, the drinking and drugging really took off after, well, I ended up getting pregnant and then marrying Steve, the one who passed away.
Okay.
And we only managed to stay together for married, even though we were together for 8 years, we were only married for a year. And when he left, that's when the drinking really took off, because now I didn't have anything holding me back.
All right.
Really not even my son. And I made some horrible decisions while he was a baby. I left him home alone a couple times. I mean, not for hours, but like for a half an hour while I go to the neighbors and drink, or once I left him in his crib for 45 minutes while I went on somebody's motorcycle to the store, and just super bad decisions.
Yeah.
And I was drinking. I was staying up all night and drinking, trying to go to work, and the alcohol took me over.
Okay.
Then I was bartending at a bar on 120th in Washington, and I met this guy named John, and we got together and we were drinking, and we happened to live in apartment buildings that were next door to each other.
Okay.
So eventually we moved in together after, you know, a couple minutes, and I can remember still that day that we moved in, that I was standing in my dining room, and I swear it was God's voice behind me, because I even turned around and looked.
Yeah.
It said, "This is a mistake."
Yeah.
I heard that voice of reason, but I didn't know what it was, you know?
And you ignored it.
And I ignored it, because when he went home for Christmas, he came back with Dilatas and wanted to know if I wanted to get high, shoot up with him. And if you remember my story from before, when I was 19 and I stopped.
You quit. Yep.
Well, this time my brain told me, "Oh, it's been 8 years. You'll be okay." So that
you can do it once. You'll be all right.
Totally. That's what my addiction told me. It's been 8 years. You'll be okay. So that started like a 3-year run, almost 3 years run of drinking and doing heroin with him. Yep. And I still had a little boy, still trying to go to work. It was very, very stressful. And
I imagine.
Luckily, I was able to get away from him. I decided I didn't want to get high anymore. And for the second time, I walked away from the needle. So I'll tell you about months, and he finally went back to Oregon where he was from, and
Okay.
he called me, and I don't know if he was trying to make a 9-step amends to me or something, but he said, I have to tell you something. And I was like, what? And he said, every time we got high, I did more. And he thought I was going to be mad. And all I said was, thank you. And then all the pieces fell into place while he was so strung out, he had to get on methadone.
Yeah, exactly.
And I didn't. So his selfishness actually saved me.
Yep.
So drinking's not working too much anymore. I actually went to a bar one night and drank and couldn't get drunk.
Wow.
First time that ever happened. Went to another bar, had another 2 drinks, still not drunk, finally went home. Then I got a job at a methadone clinic.
Okay.
And nobody knew that I had used.
Sure.
Right. I was still drinking, but they were like, do you mind working with heroin addicts? And I'm thinking, no.
No, I don't mind at
no,
all.
I don't mind. I was just a little receptionist, little clerk in the front desk. But I met a couple outreach workers, and one man gave me a big book after he heard a little bit of my story. And he said, I want you to read the first 164 pages till you see yourself in there. So I'm reading. And I get to the 3rd step about the actor adjusting the lights, and he steps on the toes of fellows and all this. And at that moment, I knew I was an alcoholic.
Yep.
I mean, I was relieved because I didn't know what I thought, but every New Year's Eve, I promised next year will be better, but I didn't know what to improve.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to change. Right.
Sure.
So now I'm an alcoholic. And about 2 days later, I took my son to a program called Kids and Divorce and Separation because, of course, his dad was doing the no call, no show.
Okay.
Really upsetting my little boy.
Yeah.
He was 7. And
poor kid.
The man took him, the woman took me. I didn't know what to expect. Treatment centers were just become popular back then. It was 1990.
Okay.
And I just told Stephanie, he's going to ask you a bunch of questions. Just tell him the truth.
Yeah.
And so I did with the lady, and I told her all about my crazy mom and the heroin and stuff that I never talked about.
Yep.
Then they got together, and the man just looked at me and he said, why don't you quit drinking? And I'm thinking, well, that's serious.
Yeah.
That's extreme. Quit. Yeah. But he said something that changed my life. And he said, you really want to, why don't you let this be the push you need to take that step?
Yeah.
And all he had to do was give me permission. And I haven't had a drink since he said that.
That's amazing.
Yes. Isn't that amazing? I was so pissed off on my way home and when I got home, because the first thing everybody thinks when they make that decision is, what am I going to do
for the rest of my life?
Everything revolves around drinking.
Yep.
Everything. So I called my outreach worker friend from work, and he said, we're taking you to a meeting.
Awesome.
So he took me to an NA meeting, and there was only about 6 people there. And I said, what do I do? And he said, introduce yourself as an addict, and that's all you have to do. And I did that. The next day, he took me to York Street, where I spent almost my first year of recovery.
Awesome.
I was so happy to be sober and be around sober people that you just don't hear that a lot. People drag their asses to AA and I didn't want to be here, and had to get a paper signed and this and that. I was happy to be sober because I finally had an answer. It
is.
I had an answer for what was wrong for 20 years. So right before I celebrated a year. So I was hanging around sober people. I got a sponsor. I started the steps. We were going out. NA and CA and AA were huge back then because of the treatment centers. So there was a lot of dances, a lot of barbecues, a lot of speakers meetings, a lot of fellowship. And I just threw myself in.
Yep. That was
Finally
a
got
great
it.
time in fellowship. I was
It
around them
was.
too.
Yes.
The fellowship was so different. We like the softball leagues. On Sunday
Yes.
we go up to Golden. There's like 500 alcoholics up there hanging out, not drinking. We
Right.
had bowling leagues. I mean, we would take over the bowling alley.
Right.
I didn't like it because we didn't drink beer, but dances. Yeah, we had dancing. Club North had dances all the time.
Oh,
Primary
Club
Purpose
North.
Club,
Yeah.
we had dances over there once a month. And I miss those days. I mean, I
I
can't dance
know.
way into the night like I used to. But we get together, for uh game night once a month. You Pictionary, all that other stuff. And it's just getting to know other people.
Right.
And that is, for me, that's what cemented it for me.
Right.
So,
Other sober alcoholics
mhm.
having fun.
Yes.
So towards the end of my year, the same outreach worker took me to a group called Putt and Sober, which
Okay.
is not golf,
And it's not York Street.
and it's not York Street.
Nope.
We're talking motorcycle
Yep.
sobriety. And
Yep.
he took me to a dance there. And then the next week, I decided to go to a meeting there, and somebody said, "My name's John. I'm an alcoholic." And I'll be God if it wasn't John that I knew from junior high school.
Woo!
He's got like
Right
a
on.
year and few months more time than I do. And I
Freaking
just couldn't
amazing.
believe it. Isn't that amazing?
It gave me chills. Yeah.
I
That was cool.
I started going to Putt and Sober, and
Mhm.
I fit in, even though I'd never been on a bike.
Yeah.
I still just fit into that crowd.
Mhm.
And of course, I got married right away.
You guys should
Still
have seen her face. I'm sorry, but it wasn't happy. So
got married right away, and still looking basically for a man to fix me. I
still
did the
looking for an
steps.
outside source to fill the hole. Mhm.
Yeah. And even though I had done the steps and I went to meetings, and I just had that hole inside still. Now, it wasn't as big as it was when I drank, of course. I heard somebody at a speakers meeting up at Estes say once that he felt like he had a hole inside with the wind whistling through. And I can relate to that. That is exactly how I felt for many years. So the hole's smaller now because I'm around recovery, but it's still there. And I struggled. I stayed sober. I stayed married. That was not a good marriage. 1 in 5 years of sobriety when we got married, and we weren't that well together.
Okay.
We broke up and got back together, but I still stayed sober. My mom died suddenly in her sleep. My dad had a stroke and passed away. I'm working full time. I've got a little kid. I finally fell off the edge kind of and got diagnosed with bipolar.
Okay.
So this is new news to me. Now I'm like my mother, which I swore to God I'd never be anything like her. So I'm messing with my medicine. I'm trying herbs. I'm trying all these different things to not be like her. But I finally had to accept it. So I struggled. Now I have like what I call moderate bipolar.
Okay.
It's not severe chronic like some people that I work with at MHCD.
Certainly.
But it was enough to mess up my life. And it's another disease that makes you make bad decisions.
Yeah. And it comes with denial.
Yeah.
It's another one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They could run neck and neck.
Oh, yeah.
Denial.
Easy.
So
and you could put anxiety and PTSD in there too.
Right.
Those people are all friends, man. So I'm diagnosed with PTSD. So
yeah.
I understand where you're coming from. Maybe not your actions, but I do get that.
I have a book for you. I'll tell you the name of it when we when this is over. You
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
that's a really good read
Okay.
about that. So that was a shock to find out I had bipolar, and I had a nervous breakdown, and I left a job that I loved for the 6 months disability. And I was so ashamed. I never went back to my job.
Oh,
I just
man.
resigned after the 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I do lay a little bit of blame on my supervisor, who was supposed to keep in touch with me during this time.
Okay.
And she didn't. And if she would have just said to me, Deanna, come back one day.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to come back 40 hours a week this week. Just come back one day and see. And if I would be able to work into it slowly. But that's not what happened. I've had many jobs since then. I struggled with my bipolar for about 14 years.
Okay.
Many jobs, many psychiatrists, never getting well until like 2014. And I got a really good doctor at MHCD who straightened me out. And now I feel I have no symptoms. Last year, last winter was the first winter that I didn't get a little depressed. I mean, I am on the road to recovery with my bipolar. And then
now, I want to ask something, but please keep that in mind. You said you still had a little bit of a hole.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that had to do with your bipolar?
It could have. No, I'll tell you what I really think after doing a bunch of reading.
Okay.
I think bipolar leaves you confused.
Okay.
But the hole in the soul is from trauma.
Okay. All right.
That's what I believe.
All right.
From trauma.
I could go with that. Sure.
The trauma that I experienced as a child with my mother, and even the trauma I experienced with my father, because he didn't click with me emotionally.
Okay.
He was a lot older than me, and we basically had nothing in common.
Yeah.
So I had a really tumultuous recovery until 2014.
Okay.
I broke up with my husband finally, and then there was a whole bunch of other men. And, I finally went and talked to a girlfriend, and she asked me if I knew about ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. Now, that was big in 90 also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's still around, but we don't talk
not
about
as well
it as
known.
much. Right. Not as well known.
A lot of people don't know what ACA is. Even young people's recovery. I mean, now it's called YPR, but I think Sissy Paw is still around. Sissy Paw was really big too. Colorado Coalition of Young People in AA.
Right. Oh. Well, in the meantime, from 2006 to 2012, or 2007 to 2012, I met somebody else.
All right.
We were together for 5 years. He was younger than me, but even though he was a very nice guy, he had the same. So the guys have gotten nicer over the years, right?
Okay.
But they still have my main theme, which is controlling and jealous. And this young guy controlled the shit out of me, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it happened. I stopped going to meetings, not completely. I was still going to 5 or 6 a month, maybe.
Okay.
But nothing that was going to keep me on the beam.
Okay.
Keep me in the boat.
Okay.
And by the time totally. And he isolated me with his family, and they were in recovery. And so, that's how I lied to myself. I'm hanging around a bunch of recovered people, but nobody's going to meetings.
Yeah. So a bunch of sober people.
Bunch of sober people. That's another lie I told myself. So we broke up, and I hit a bottom even worse than the bottom I hit when I first got sober.
Yeah. It happens.
Now we're talking about emotional sobriety, not
Yep.
the drinking and the drugging.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to my friend. She ended up being my sponsor, but she asked me if she could take me through ACA, this workbook,
Yep.
the steps in the workbook of ACA. And I'm desperate, so I say yes.
Mm-hmm.
We're working. It takes about a year to go through these steps.
Okay.
And she's very thorough. But at the end of the steps, somebody today in the morning meeting was reading the spiritual experience in the back of the book.
Yes.
And everything that was listed in that little definition was what I experienced when I finished the ACA steps.
Wow.
I completely changed. I mean, you could ask 10 people at Punt and Sober who've known me for a long time, and everyone will tell you, yes, Deanna changed.
Oh.
It was
Wow.
it was like I landed.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
I'm,
like the largest epiphany ever. Congratulations. Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. And since then, my sobriety's gotten stronger. My higher power's gotten stronger. I really struggled with the higher power thing because I think sometimes smart people struggle.
Yes, we do.
With higher powers. Mm-hmm. And I look at it now like I had a little one that was like big enough to keep me sober all those years, but I didn't have an all-encompassing one like I do now.
Yeah.
That Bobby had said once that she wears her higher power like a loose cloak over her shoulders and arms. And I thought, what? But now, a few years later, I totally relate to that.
Yeah, now you get it because you've been through some things that you hadn't been through yet. And so, I get that too. I mean, I understand that we all get to have our own higher power, but we got to be realistic about it too. My first higher power was Batman, and there was nothing serious about that, and somebody sat me down. They're like, come on, Dion, and now I have a relationship with God. I call him God, so I don't make other people don't misunderstand. But yes, it has to be all encompassing. It
does. The thing that she helped me the most is I'm a Virgo, and I'm also like this really woo. You too?
Yep, September 18th.
Oh, I'm the 14th. So
good
we
for
just
you.
had birthdays.
Yes. We're both 29. Happy birthday.
Right. Thank you. Happy birthday to you too.
Thanks.
She gave me an exercise where I had to write a list of attributes I wanted in my higher power.
Okay. Wow,
nobody ever done that.
I see where this is going. Cool. Go ahead.
Nobody ever had done that with me before. Sure. I didn't have any sense of what my higher power was all those years. And now I have a full page list of everything that my higher power is included with my higher power. Yeah. And now I have something concrete.
Yeah.
Even though it's elusive, but those attributes are concrete.
Yeah. And what's fantastic about that is then, for me, I kind of saw my relationship with God as my first successful relationship. And then if I started to base my other relationships on that, it would succeed also. And now I have successful relationships.
Right. That's an awesome way to look at things. Wow. I like that. I'm going to have to steal that.
You can. You steal it all day. I'm sure I stole it from somebody else.
Right. That's awesome. So, I had a lot of fun drinking until I didn't.
Yeah.
I went to a lot of concerts, did a lot of camping, did a lot of stuff, a lot of dancing, a lot of parties. And after I did that heroin, that fun wore off, and it was never going to come back.
Nope.
I mean, I've heard people say they were miserable from their very first drink, and that is just not my experience.
Not me either.
It,
I had a really good time for a long time.
Yeah.
Until it stopped.
And it stopped. And I drove drunk, and I took a lot of chances, and I risked my life, especially when I went to Mexico and did a lot of crazy things. But it's so weird when you're using, you just don't look at them like life-threatening until you get the chance to look back.
Yep. And then when you went and saw that therapist, you know, because I'm gonna bring this back up because I like what you said, because I brought up, you know, maybe it was the bipolar and you saying it was trauma, and that made sense to me. And it made sense to me because I had it, you know, I was thinking PTSD, you know, but that's exactly what PTSD is dealing with trauma. And I can't imagine that we go out for 20, 30 years and put ourselves in some of the most dangerous situations in the world and not walk out with any trauma.
Right.
We've seen people killed in front of us, literally, and then we go party. I mean, we're screwed in the head. I was, man. So yeah, it was fun until it wasn't anymore.
Right. I mean, not only did I have the trauma of my childhood, I re-traumatized myself over and over and over again.
And over.
Right.
And then I would put myself in situations for that trauma to happen so I could justify my anger. You bet. Especially if it had to do with the person with the trauma.
Right. Right. And then we're dealing with other people with trauma.
Yeah.
So it's everybody's trauma, you know, from whatever it's from, you know, all colliding in a bar.
Yeah. It's like watching a bunch of neutrons bouncing around in a small space.
Right.
The craziness. Well, fantastic. It's been really fun getting to know you. What's life like for you nowadays?
Well, of course, we're working from home mostly. As a peer specialist, I go out and visit people.
Okay.
So the nursing homes, some of the nursing homes are opening up a little bit still with social distancing and masks. I have somebody I visit in her apartment. So I have like 3, and then two people I meet over the computer.
Okay.
It's not called Zoom, it's Microsoft version called Teams.
Yeah.
And so we meet on Teams, and but all my staff meetings and all the meetings are all online. And the one cool thing was that when this first started, and it was really scary at first because they sent us home from work. City shuts down and nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
We thought we'd be back to work in 3 weeks.
Yep.
So I did a bunch of unhealthy things, eating a lot of sugar and just not taking care of myself. I was baking, and then I thought, I had just bought a Groupon for beginner yoga at this yoga center. And I thought, I wonder if they're doing anything on Zoom. And sure enough, they were doing it. So
awesome.
I've been doing yoga since the beginning of April. And I read in one of those books that I'm reading that yoga is a treatment for trauma.
It is. Yeah. Because it's it can let you focus, and the chakras. I don't know much about yoga, but that would just make somebody that deals with trauma, that would make a lot of sense, because you're focusing and you're really on your breathing.
And the breathing, right. Yeah. And I just fell in love with it. So I'm not going to quit it. I've tried it a couple other times and didn't stick with it. But this time I'm going to stick with it. Yeah. So I feel calm and serene for basically the first time these last 5 years, ever since I did those ACA steps. The calmness and the sereneness has just been surrounding me.
Yeah.
I've never experienced. Yes. And also, as I get 30 years in sobriety, I also am 30 years older. So things just come with age also. I'm more mature. I have more patience. Things don't bother me as much.
Yeah.
The one thing that will keep a person down more than anything is that critic in your head. And I was able to get rid of mine for the most part. And I can't begin to tell you how much my self-esteem raised.
Yeah. I had no self-esteem.
Right. Either did I. And I'm
Yeah.
walking around like I have my shit together.
Yeah, like I
All
was,
the time.
yeah. No,
All the time.
and yeah, that's a hard place to live in too, because then you have to act on that,
And
and it's just,
well, you're always acting.
yeah,
You know, I got to AA and they said there was a solution and I believed it.
yeah, me
I
too.
believed it because
I
there had to be something another way to live other than what I was doing.
Yeah, you know, it'd be, even when I first came in the program, it'd be hard pressed to convince me otherwise. Um, but I was one of the original members of the Phoenix Concept back when it was run by Ray
Ooh.
Hayworth, and it was just, gosh, I wasn't sure where I was going with that. Too many things happening at once in my head.
Right.
I guess I'm just I'm kind of digressing with thinking about all the things that were going on before. So, Deanna, thank you very much for coming on and talking and sharing your
Oh
experience,
yeah.
strength, and
It's
hope.
fun.
Yeah,
Fun.
these are always a lot of fun. Uh, and I enjoy it because I get to be part of your story,
Right.
and get to be involved, and that's I love doing that.
Yeah.
Um,
This is what you're doing is fantastic.
thank you very much. Yeah, this actually came around because of my anxiety and my PTSD, I didn't travel outside the house much. So a few years ago, I decided to start a telehealth program online for people that wanted to talk or whatever. So when Corona hit, you guys all entered my world.
Right.
This is my world right here. And
Right.
I started training people how to stay home and
Right.
not, blow your own head off. Or, there are days when you spend 2 weeks by yourself. You're going to drive yourself crazy, man. You're going to.
Right.
So,
Not very many people are comfortable in their own skin.
mhm. So finding that serenity amongst the chaos comes with time.
Right.
It does.
Right.
So, all right, everybody. There we go.
There you are.
Okay.